Commissioner Drew. Commissioner Drew will report on the Commission's Public Lands Committee meeting held in Reno, and the Commission may take action to provide direction to the committee. Commissioner Drew.
Thank you, Chairman. We held our first meeting of the Public Lands Committee on Friday at 8 a.m. in this office. I made it through a whole meeting without melting anything down, which I thought was a good start. Just to give you a sense, one of the items on our agenda was the committee charter, and I've had someone ask me what is a committee charter, and essentially what it does is defines the purpose and goals of the committees. In talks with the chairman and the DAG, it's his discretion to appoint the committees. That's something that this board voted on, so that it's believed that it's also his discretion to approve the committee charter. So just to give you a sense of what we're doing with the Public Lands Committee, I'll read the purpose to you. The purpose of our committee is to gather information and input on issues pertinent to public lands management and policy that may impact wildlife habitat, or wildlife-based recreational opportunities. The committee may provide the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners with recommended actions pertinent to such issues. So that gives you a flavor of where we're going. In our first meeting, we really wanted to focus on the sage grouse issue and get everyone up to speed on where some of the federal agencies were coming from. We actually were lucky enough to get Ted Cook, State Supervisor with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, to come in and talk about, report on and update us on the sage grouse listing decisions, some of the risk factors and some of the timelines that Fish and Wildlife Service is under. And we also had an opportunity for State Director Amy Luters with BLM and her Deputy State Director Raul Morales to come in and report and update us on what sage grouse conservation efforts they're taking. Just to give you a sense of some of the highlights, Ted Cook with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, I think the highlights that maybe we want to hit on, the top 3 threats, in his opinion, were 1 through 3, fire and invasive species. Those were the threats to sage grouse statewide, with the exception of the bi-state, and in his opinion, one of the biggest threats down there was pinyon and juniper encroachment. We had discussions on everything from hunting to predation to grazing and regulatory mechanism. It was a good interchange of I think, ideas and a good discussion. I would encourage folks to visit the committee webpage to pull up the support material he provided us, and also our minutes when they're available, and hopefully per Mr. Dixon's recommendation we can send an email out to folks on that. In terms of the BLM, again, we had a really good presentation. I guess the other thing I should mention are some of the timelines. The timelines for Fish and Wildlife Service to make a determination on listing for the bi-state population, which is along the Nevada-California border in Douglas, Lyon, and Mineral counties on our side of the state, is fall of 2014? 13. And so all the information that they need to make that decision on needs to be to them by the fall of 2012, which is coming up pretty quick. The statewide greater sage grouse issue and westwide greater sage grouse issue is the fall of 15, and all their information needs to be in by 14. The reason that becomes important is one of the big risk factors that Fish and Wildlife Service determined in their listing decision was that there was a lack of regulatory mechanisms, and Ken may update us a little bit on that in his update following me here. But the BLM has put in place an instructional memorandum that basically puts in some regulatory mechanisms. That's going to be in place between now and September or fall of 2014. And what they're doing in between now and fall of 2014 is developing a programmatic environmental impact statement that would update all of their resource management plans and essentially put some permanent regulations and also conservation measures in place. So that's where we're going. Again, we had, I think, a good discussion with members of the committee on where BLM was going, some of our thoughts and ideas, and things of that nature. I'd turn it over to the other committee members if there's anything else they felt needed to be updated. Just to let you know, Ken Wellington's on the committee, Commissioner Morai, Mr. Mike Turnipseed, myself as chair, Commissioner Macbeth, and Dr. Paul Dixon So those are your committee members. If you have questions, feel free to talk to me or any of the rest of us. And again, I'd encourage you, if you have an item you want us to look at or something, a question you have, feel free to ask it. I don't think there's anything on our agenda that would warrant any sort of action at this time.
Any other members of the Public Lands Committee have any comments? The only comment I have is that I had actually made or asked a question of both U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the BLM with regard to funding, because when they start talking about the number one issue being the habitat and invasive species, and basically they're talking about the cheatgrass, and if you know how big a problem that is, and you look at I mean, it just looks like dollar signs when you look at some of these areas with the cheatgrass, and Mr. Cook actually indicated that there was that they're actually going after money, and it looks like it might be as much as $200 million. That it could be money that I would imagine a substantial amount of it goes on the ground, for habitat issues, and so if there's a silver lining at all to this, that maybe having that money and having a say in what those projects are might be something that we ought to concentrate on, and obviously it won't just benefit sage grouse, but it'll also benefit any of our sagebrush dependent species, of course, in which number one is in our hearts is mule deer. And so, if there's anything there that was good. Now, obviously, we also have to work very closely with our, ranching community and make sure that, that's a fair process there as well, because we're feel we're in partnership with our ranching community on these issues. So, anyway, that's my comment. Okay. Since this is an action item, I guess I have to take it out to the public. Do we have any public comment on our Public Lands Committee, or any issues that anybody wants to talk about with regard to what was on our agenda for the first meeting, which was basically sage grouse? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and bring it back. Okay, we're moving good. I'm going to go ahead and why don't we go ahead and start agenda item 16. This is our reports information.